to the COVID-19 pandemic. I'm sure it is going to be years before we recover from this crisis. We noted that there were many discussions in recent times focusing on economy, financial, industry, and safety measures, etc. In today's webinar, we are going to discuss on some different aspects altogether. We are going to discuss on the new skills required by the staff to adjust to the new normal after the COVID-19. For today's discussion, we have invited 3 experts in the human resource management. Let me first introduce the lady in the panel. Mrs. Aroshi Nanayakara is a non-executive director of Sampath Bank PLC and Hela Clothing Private Limited. She is also the vice chairman and board director of Sri Lanka Institute of Directors. Mrs. Nanayakara is the chief executive officer of the global consulting company and a dynamic leader in the fields of strategic planning, HR, and risk management, having gathered extensive experience through her 20+ years in multinationals, as well as some of Sri Lanka's prominent blue chip companies. The other panelist, Mr. Isuru Tilakawardana, is the Deputy General Manager, Human Resources of Commercial Bank Ceylon PLC. He is on the boards of Commercial Bank Maldives Limited, Commercial Development Company PLC, and Commercial Insurance Brokers Limited. Mr. Tilakawardana counts over 29 years in the HR profession, having served previously as the Group Director HR at Remas Holdings PLC and the Chief Operating Officer, Additional General Manager of Sri Lanka Insurance Corporation Limited. Then, the moderator of today's webinar will be Mr. Anura D. Alice, serial transformer. I'm interested in knowing that bit further, Mr. Alice. And he is the Chief Executive Officer of Pixel International. Mr. Alice counts over 29 years of technology industry leadership, C-suite executive management, and board level experience. Prior to Pixel, he has served as General Manager of Pearson Lanka, a fully owned subsidiary of Pearson PLC. Mr. Alice is experienced in business transformation and has the core strength of leveraging digital pathways in growing valuable businesses. I'm really grateful to all of them for readily accepting our invitation and spending their time to be here with us today. Also, I need to express my sincere appreciation to the Continuous Professional Development Committee, especially the Chairman, Mr. Jeremy D. Silva, and Deputy Chairman, Mr. Tikshana Pandita-Sekara, for the efforts taken to organize this webinar. So we are all ready to start this webinar now. Thank you very much for being here. I hope that the next 1 hour to come will be of immense value to you. Thank you, and over to you, Mr. Alice.
Thank you so much, Aruna, for the introduction and a great introduction to 3 of us. Really appreciate. May I request from all of you, we have some difficulties in time to time switching on your mic. There's absolutely no reason to switch on the mic. Take your question. We'll take your questions through the Zoom platform. You have the chat. You can chat. And once you chat, we'll pick up your questions if there's any necessary question. And then again, please, I think Aroshi, I can't see you. Are you also online now?
Yes, Anura.
Yeah.
Thank you. Can the others see me?
Yes, we all can see you now.
Anura, you're muted.
So yeah, thanks Aruna and Jeremy for giving the perspective from the Professional Bankers Association. It's a privilege for me also to speak and moderate here. I think before I start, I wanted to give a few perspectives to all of the listeners. Just to let you know, if you look at, there's globally an organization called FM Global. Some of you would have been in the risk assessment, organizational risk assessment, and in the bank also risk assessment would know, or in the actuaries in the life insurance or insurance field know. FM Global does a global assessment of countries every year. In 2019, they assessed and they said, just to give you a few numbers to your head, number one, globally resilient country in a pandemic, in a disaster, in a issue that a country facing, who can go forward without any issue is Norway, number one. And they gave number 10 to USA and UK. And then Denmark and all those countries came number 7, 8 ranking. Now let's look at another perspective. When COVID-19 hit the world, by the way, Sri Lanka was in 83rd position in the global resilience ranking. Now, when the COVID-19 hit the world, Corona, COVID-19, whatever the world you like to call it, they also, globally, IMF and all the companies came in, or the global organization came in assessment with the World Health Organization. And in that ranking, interestingly, Norway was in the 53rd position, which is the number one in global resilience. USA was in actually 70, 80 positions, USA, UK. And Sri Lanka, interestingly, was in 113th position until we hit this cluster, which is related to the forces cluster growth of the COVID. Now, what does it tell? Sri Lanka is 100 position means that actually more the number is better in the COVID-19, because number one is the worst country. Number 100 is, or 100 or 200 is a better country. So how come Norway is in number one position and USA in 10th position, and then Sri Lanka was in the 83rd position? When you look at COVID-19, how come these countries were worse than us? I think it's how governments, the leadership reacted. That is what I want to establish. So as a country, I think we have taken a very forward step. Industries, bankers, industries like manufacturers, all of them come forward and put up their plans and to move this country forward. So I want to give first a positive spill on the talk before we engage into the real conversation, that it is not at all bad. But on the other hand, if you look at everything we did 3 months ago, today changed. We had different cheese, different sausages, different types of food, bread. But today, or 8 weeks ago, we ate pretty much the same bread. I know I was in a 10-second pause because to understand that, because all of us ate the same bread baked by the same bakery, maybe with, and if you look at the groceries, same shop, because the food, sometimes the supermarkets were closed. So our lives have become more or less unified in that way, and everyone was given an opportunity to think forward. So with that perspective, everything in terms of how we do business were trying to be leveraged through digital platforms. People were trying to look at how we can take the advantage of availability of the digital resources and platforms. I'll stop here. Now I'll turn straight away to S.E.C.U.R.E and ask, with that entry, S.E.C.U.R.E, from HR point of view, you're one of the leading HR personnel, and I know that you're handling the biggest Sri Lankan biggest trade unions as well. So looking at your experience and the expertise you have, what is your perspective to the situation?
S.E.C.U.R.E, you need to unmute. S.E.C.U.R.E, you're still muted. Right, okay.
Okay,
yeah,
can you hear me?
Can hear.
Thank you, Aruna. Thank you, APB, for inviting me. Actually, situation unraveled much faster than we thought, and didn't have much of a lead time to prepare for anything, because we ran from event to event. That's kind of situation. So at the very beginning, it was a confusion and how to face the situation. But then as we found our way through, there was great cooperation between the trade union as well as staff members. And I think we managed to face the challenge very well because staff was scared. There was a lot of stress on them. And we had real logistical issues because staff were scattered all over the country, and some had transport issues, some had lodging issues, some had even things like food not being available. Some were asked to leave from their boarding houses. All kind of issues came, and sometimes we had to quarantine the whole branch because there had been somebody suspect of COVID who came into that particular branch, but other branch people volunteered to go and run that branch. So there was great camaraderie and support right throughout.
Thanks. I think I turn to you, Aroshi, with the same question to enter into the conversation. What is your perspective in terms of understanding the situation?
So I think yes, it's been a dramatic change from where we were and what we were and how we were doing things. There's a LinkedIn article that is just going to come out in my LinkedIn on how we've exploited the world to all of that, and here a 1 gram of a virus globally, they are saying the entire weight of the coronavirus is just 1 gram, right? So 1 gram has brought entire economies, the entire global economy to its knees, right? To a standstill. So it's just been a tremendous experience, I think, where people have really needed to figure out life, balance, what are priorities in their lives in terms of men and women both. I think going back to what is the essence of humanity, right? And in the month or the 2 months that we've been in lockdown, the earth has to a great extent healed itself, right? Taken away the pollution to all that we have put in. The ozone layer is supposed to have, the ozone hole is supposed to have closed. So tremendous impact in terms of even the environmental side. But to be very frank, I am not very pessimistic. I have a more optimistic view, which we will be discussing in the hour to come. Yes, it's been a change, and these changes are waves that we ride, and we will come out of it only stronger. That is kind of the message I want to share. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Aroshi and S.E.C.U.R.E. Come to a question to you, S.E.C.U.R.E.
Anura, you're muted.
Yeah. Sorry about that. So come to the next round. I would like to ask S.E.C.U.R.E. Now, banks are known to be very strict in processes and
We lost Anura. Jeremy, you want to pose the question till Anura comes on? You're muted as well. Jeremy, you're muted.
Hello. You can hear?
Yes, okay.
Yeah. S.E.C.U.R.E. Now, as we look forward for this change, now from the skill set side, there are new adaptabilities that certain staff would have to do, especially the digital side. What do you see? How would they adapt to these type of learnings and take the system going forward?
S.E.C.U.R.E. muted. I think the speakers might as well be unmuted.
Jeremy, actually, staff is quite ready for digital in that sense, because we have been trying to go that journey for a while. Our biggest problem has been customers, because staff was actually working towards it and developing programs, going towards that. But most of the customers prefer to personalize banking, come to the branch and receive services which could have been done even online or through ATMs from the banking counter. So that was the dilemma we always had. Like in terms of serving them, we wanted them to give that personal touch, but we were continuously promoting the digital channels also. So I think this particular situation, I think, would compel the customers to look for digital channels. I think that would, in that sense, would be advantage for the banks.
Aruna, you are on. You can continue. Hello, Aruna is still
connecting, it says.
Yeah, with that, Arushi, what do you think of the views from a per se of the females or the ladies that we have in the banking sector? They have new challenges now with this change. So how do you see that they would be able to adapt, and what are the things from your view that some of the points that they can also take and change in their personal day-to-day matters to handle the work as well as the family life?
Right. Jeremy, one of the key constraints is that, now you're at home. There will be certain people who have the space in their houses to whatever, to, have a separate room where they can go lock themselves up if there's a meeting or whatever. But there'll be so many others who wouldn't have that facility. So a constraint there, a real challenge, because you'll have kids running all over the place, do all that. And in the midst of this, you have to try and concentrate and connect to your online meetings and do your work. So that's number one. Number two is that as a woman, still you're the primary caregiver, especially in Sri Lanka. In other countries, yes, it's different, but especially in Sri Lanka. And because of that, you still have the cooking to do, you still have the cleaning to do, right? And a greater burden is now for all the kids, the young kids. Schools have landed the entire school curriculum onto the parents.
Correct.
And it's usually the mother, all of that, the homework to the classes to everything has to be done. So tremendous pressure, because on top of, now I would think, I have done trainings at HSBC, HNB, NDB, covering about 500 lady managers. And some of them tell me they get up at 3 o'clock in the morning. This is pre-COVID. 3 o'clock in the morning to cook, do all that, get the kids ready and be in office by time, on time, right? So now, because you're at home, you wouldn't obviously get up at 3 in the morning, right? However, the same workload is going to be there, right? So enormous challenge in how to manage that whole gamut of things. At least when you come to office, you have the capacity to focus. Kids have gone to school, you have the ability to focus. Here you're juggling, even otherwise a woman is juggling so many things, but this is juggling in one space. So it becomes pretty tough to handle, especially if you have young kids, So I think from all the messages that are coming out, the research that is being done, everybody's recommending that you have a very structured approach to it, that you get up, you get the kids up at a reasonable time, not at 6 in the morning or whatever, 5 in the morning, but reasonable time, have the structure so that they also sit and do the work from 10 to 12 is school time or whatever, so that it's easier to handle and you don't completely go out of your, body clock and start sleeping at, 3 in the morning or something like that. So a lot of changes, and it's how quickly that you have to adapt. So for us, I think we went into 2 months of lockdown. It would have taken the ladies at least a month to figure this whole thing out and to get into some sort of pattern. And then 1 month later, we are now back to work again, right? So it's like a, constant roller coaster.
Change.
Exactly. So, yeah.
S.E.C.U.R.E, do you want to add on anything from your experiences that you have seen from your staff, whatever thing that has come up in between after this new change?
I think what I saw is our staff in commercial bank, they showed great resilience. I mean, they adapted to the situation very well. Even at the very beginning, we had about 1,500, 1,800 kind of working across different branches and different centers. Gradually, that number grew because this is the first time I think banking was declared as essential service in that sense. So there were a lot of things that we got to tune up for that. But as the weeks went by, actually the staff number who are coming to work increased. Of course, we also did certain things to facilitate their arrival and whatever possible in terms of the situation at that time. So I think the overall banking industry, I think did a good job in delivering banking services to the customers in this country. In spite of all the personal dilemma the individuals has to go through to deliver that service.
I would add that I think banking was at the forefront of really, pivoting, again, a new word like new normal, pivoting and adjusting to the whole situation, right? Now Sampath Bank had something where you're delivering, you don't even need to come to the ATM, you're delivering cash to the household through PickMe, right? So I think we were far ahead as bankers or banking as an industry, far ahead of the food side of it. If you take Keels to Cargills to Arpico, all of the main supermarkets were really challenged, because they haven't had this kind of online this thing, but we have been kind of on a digital journey for a while, and ramping it up, I think somehow we did it well. So it took a while for the others to kind of come back to the level that was required in getting the main supplies and all of that to the consumer.
We are trying, just a minute, I'm trying to get in Aruna back again. He's online, he was having it says join in, but anyway, we continue.
Andre is there, I think.
I'm back.
Hello, Andre, you're back. Welcome back again.
Yeah, so it's exactly what we planned when we planning this Zoom actually. It is like a small pandemic. The whole power shut down in this area for some reason. And the network down after when I was trying on the mobile phone. So then only both came together. So sorry for that. I think I missed, probably you would have taken my other question, Aroshi, around the, how the, basically how the situation taking care of
women.
Yeah, sorry?
Yeah, is impacting women and how they have had to adjust to the...
Right. So I think just there was a question on this. I would like to put this to straight away to get a view of all right. When pandemic hit most top companies, I'll put this across to S.E.C.U.R.E because this question came outside my normal kind of standard areas to cover, but I thought this is a good question. When the pandemic hit, most top companies were first to get into wage cuts. Now, he's actually asking, isn't it too early to cut these, go into those kind of decisions? And also getting rid of staff, sometimes wage cuts, sometimes getting rid of. The question is, are we too early in the pandemic to make that kind of decisions? And asking all of our views on that. So I probably ask S.E.C.U.R.E, you want to respond to that first?
Yeah. It's a tough one because the reason is each industry, each business has its own dynamics. I don't want to comment on those companies or their decisions, but it all depends on your results and your market opportunities and all that. But the main task in this kind of uncertain environment is to convey confidence. Make sure that your team feeling confident about the future. Because if we panic, I think most of us coming out of this successfully will be more difficult. So I think an organization and a leadership should work towards establishing clarity, establishing vision, how we are going to come out of it, and more than anything else, establishing confidence in the team, because it is that team ultimately that has to bring the business out of the difficulty also. While I understand certain industries, certain companies may have some serious issues they have to grapple in the short term, but for any company, I think protecting your valuable human resources and your key players and giving them confidence is very important to come out of the situation also successfully.
Yeah. Aroshi, I know you were talking. Can I take a turn here and then turn to you?
Yes.
Yeah. So my perspective, yeah.
Just on the same question, I'm thinking as a, from a corporate planning view, that's my area of business. You have to look at it in two ways. Number one, you have to ensure that the organization sustains into the future, right? If you don't, you pay salaries for everybody, you make sure all your people are with you, but 6 months down the line, if the entire company has to close down, if you take so many apparel companies in the US have just gone under, right? If your entire thing is closing down, then you're not doing anybody any service. That is number one. Number two, the flip side of it is, as an organization, you have to, this is the entire planning thing that you have to go into when you're, say, on a board. You need to have, and you need to build in the resilience in your organization. And what does that mean? We are talking of balance of payment and all of that for a country. The same thing applies to a company, right? Some situation hits you, you need to have the liquidity, you need to have the financial wherewithal to withstand that, right? You should be having a 3 to 4 months buffer where you don't need to, but is that what is happening now? Not really, because our corporates are really, and that's the capitalistic model that that the world is in. You're to the nail, you're borrowing to whatever, because you're on such an expansion drive all the time, and you're really not looking at the savings and that buffer to see whether something will hit you and whether you need to survive. Yeah. So my point is, if as bankers, and I don't think too many of us have cut salaries, as bankers, we are giving such concessions to our customers. We are giving moratoriums to all of that. We need to afford the same courtesy to our people, till it becomes, and if we prove as, say, a board that we are taking everybody into account, not just our customers, and being fair, if we come to the real crunch, our people will say, I will give 25%. And there are companies where that has happened. Nobody has asked them. They have voluntarily donated their month's salary to whatever to ensure the cash flows of the organization are, kept intact. So both ways. But I think from a worker point of view, you have to have that loyalty to the company. And from a management point, we need to have that loyalty to our people, both ways.
Yeah, I'll give another perspective to this, Aroshi and S.E.C.U.R.E. I believe firmly every CEO, every leader, every board, there are two factors that are very critical, whatever, despite which company, which institute, which industry you work. One is the empathy. Empathy is that understanding the leader understand the employees, and employee understand the leader. Both sides. It doesn't go, and also how you understand your customer. Know your customer and how you understand your customer. The other part is integrity. Integrity comes with different meanings in this aspect or respect. I think at least the transparency side of it. Now, the reason I bought this is that some companies had to go through massive cuts. Some companies would have gone through little cuts. Some companies or some organizations has never gone, like you said, Aroshi banks, never. But my perspective to this is that's a leader's qualities that you need to have. The other side is that the organization has three other factors. Aroshi said something compared to the economic kind of indicators. If you go to the P&L level, I think it's your cash flow, not the P&L alone, but your company position, cash flow position, your reserves, which is on the balance sheet, and finally onto your customers, how much you plan your revenue streams, like pipeline. The reason is, now, let me tell you first two things. Now, I have been in company previously, which I don't name the name, that actually had a very successful exit in 2006, which a very good profit for the investors, which I was a CEO. So we had a situation. The reason empathy and integrity comes here, the first thing I announced was that when we had a very bad 3 months, the employees, what we are going through, make sure that they understand. And you won't imagine everyone in an assembly or in a town hall, one by one senior employees came front and said, we are happy to go with 50 or whatever. Since you said exactly the truth to us, what happens? And same applies today. And I've been in a company very proudly, very unhappily saying that, but proudly saying that exactly the same position we had to do. And some of our industries had to go through pay cuts. And those pay cuts came considering what is impacting the employee as well as organization. Because if organizations are there, and unemployment is the last thing you want to see in any country. If you look at the USA has 38 million plus unemployed. Now, the medium scale enterprises are the ones that are basically helping the economy to grow in any country. And that is a fact. So when you look at the most impacted ones are medium sized enterprises, because large sized enterprises have their enough reserves, enough funds. The small, they don't mind because they mom and dad shops or even small ones, they had no problem, 5 state employees. But if you look at medium sized enterprises, they globally have problems. The ones that are on the road in USA today to collect foods are medium sized enterprises, CEOs. It's a fact. So I think it's there where come the two sides of the qualities. The leader and the team have the ability of exactly explaining the employees the current position. And Aroshi, totally agree with you and S.E.C.U.R.E, both, particularly Aroshi, your point about when you show that thing and people volunteer actually. And I have experience in my life, and the company that I mentioned in 2006, when you explain exact position and promise that you're going to come out in the next 6 months with all foreseeable factors, I think employees will support you 100%. Is that you go to a boardroom and make a decision to cut everyone's salary 30%, 40% without realizing that side? I think where the problem comes in many organizations is my view. I'll take another challenging question to probably take the turn, go to Aroshi now. I'm looking at what questions are coming on the thread as well, by the way. Aroshi, employee well-being is a key topic during lockdown and work from home. Well, it's a new norm actually. There are 5 aspects I see in well-being that people are talking about: physical, psychological, economical, or finance, social, and environmental. Now, if you particularly consider the psychological side of the well-being, and you're representing a board position and leadership position in a number of organizations, and you're also a female leader, what is your recipe in managing psychological well-being of your team when this kind of a situation happens? Because everyone is under stress.
Yes, Anura, I think I would call it emotional rather than psychological. How do you manage those emotions of frustration, of helplessness, of not knowing how things are going to change, whether you're going to have a job or not? How are you going to manage with, even if you're getting your basic salary, say your allowances are cut, how are you going to manage all of that? I think one of the keys to building emotional resilience is none other than getting hit by things like this, right? Yes, for the first 2 weeks, for the first month, even if you take our children, right, they're lost. For the first month, they're just like running around, moping around, and they don't know what to do, right? But by the second month, they're like, no, I don't really need to go out of the house. I'm used to it, right? So, you know, it's adapting and figuring out how things need to be, right? And the human being has that resilience. When we are running in our rat race and we don't have the time to de-stress, we might think that we don't have the resilience, but the human being is built that way. So we kind of forget the natural responses that we have, right? And one of the things I think is that whatever said and done, yes, on one side you're adding stress, but on the other side, you are de-stressing also. You're not running from here to there, back-to-back meetings to whatever. You're at home, whatever said and done, right? So there is an element of, you know, reducing of stress that comes from that. You're with the people you love, right? And as long as nobody is hit by COVID and suffering, you're kind of okay. Yes, food you might not, as I think you said, or Jeremy said, I don't know, we got used to having different kinds of bread and sausages and whatever, but, you know, but we managed. So I think emotional resilience, now one of the key things, and I think the government understood this quite early on, is that you need to make sure you're working out that adrenaline to all of that out of your body, out of your system. And in that, the key I would think in any sort of emotional troubled times is exercise, right? So you need to make sure your kids and your dog and yourself, you're all out there. And the government allowed even during curfew, there were plenty of people walking on the road. And the police didn't bother you as long as you were wearing your mask. Not the best thing to do while you're exercising, but, you know, so one of the key things, I think. And a lot of people, I mean, as the lockdown started, everybody was sending the WhatsApp.
Arusha, you muted yourself.
Sorry, that happened automatically. Okay, you're going to be so enormous because you've been eating, but actually the home cooked food, right, without the additives and all of the fat, lots of people have lost weight, right, because you're eating good food. So I think it's important to make sure that you really get that required exercise, the proper sleep, and the good nutrition, you know.
Arushi, connected to that, I would ask you another question now. How much you believe in the servant leader type? Because now here is that you stay home and your staff is also individually working. Do you think it may play a role or not playing a role? Do you need to be servant leader here, or you don't need to be worried about that qualities?
Right. I think you're asking about flexible work patterns, and another new word that has come up is work from home, WFH, I think. And actually, I did research on this for Brandix when I was with Brandix about 10 years ago, right? Working from home is possible in certain scenarios. It's possible with certain types of personalities. It is not for everyone, right? So an organization has to be careful. Now in a pandemic situation, you're in a lockdown for a month or two, yes, everybody will kick in and, you know, do the required work from home. But can this be the new norm as they are saying? I don't think so, right? I mean, now 2 days out of lockdown, all you need to do is to look out your window to really understand whether there's a new norm, right? And again, I was doing some research on the Spanish flu 100 years ago exactly. It killed 1/3 of the world's population, right? The mortality rate currently is 0.004 or 0.0004, right? Out of 7.8 billion people, we have lost 348,000 people. Nothing compared to the 1/3 that they lost 100 years ago. How long did they take to forget the pandemic and all of these deaths? Less than a year. So how long do you think we are going to take with a highly socially connected world to all of that to forget? So, we are going to go back to the same old things, right? But I think you need to make sure something like this happens, you as an organization are prepared. And that whole digital journey is one of those key aspects of it.
I think you're right. Going to the history, 1918, this happened, and 500 million infected, 50 million died, which is 10%. And
they are saying 50 to 100 million.
Yeah, and the saddest part is the majority of that 50 million to 100 million died in the second wave, which means the ignorance. So I know that's a different topic, but I just brought it because that's a fact actually lessons we learn. Thank you so much, Aroshi, for your views. S.E.C.U.R.E, now we are talking, actually, I'm taking a kind of piggybacking Aroshi's the answer, where she was talking about, in the end, she touched, for some reason, digital transformation. So taking that forward, S.E.C.U.R.E, now banks are having great, I know last 5 years, all the CIOs, I know, Rohan, to all of those banks were putting forward large digital transformations and roadmaps. Getting your banks more automated and user experience, mobile user experience, and more user experience, better user experience, I would say, and get the client satisfaction and change the way we work. Now, this pandemic also bring further pressure, and there was a question to the boardroom and the CIO particularly. Are you driving the roadmap or COVID driving the roadmap? I think COVID driving the roadmap, if you really look at it. So my question to you is, once you change those kind of things, make those kind of changes to banks and getting more and more digitally ready, is your staff digital ready?
Actually,
what kind of plans you have to make them quickly ready?
As I said earlier, we have been working and investing a lot on this area, because the retail banking model we are following in the country, all of us together, is a very expensive model. So it was anyway stretched to the maximum, and everyone was feeling it is not sustainable as we go on with the high rents and staff costs and all that. So everyone was focusing on improving our digital capability, coming out with new platforms, preparing the staff towards it. But one thing, as I said earlier, was that we could really push the customer towards it, because we were scared how they would react to it if we do it in a little bit of a forceful way. So we were trying to nudge the customer towards it, and then it really didn't have the desired effect yet. So in that way, COVID will definitely help. But on the staff side also, our operations are still very much manual. I mean, we can create digital front ends, but we have seen there a lot of manual work going on, and our data mining capabilities are not very good as an industry. I think we really have a lot of data, but I don't think we are doing enough with that data. So the things like big data is coming in. So we need to really work towards that. The new generation who are coming in for employment is ready for that, because they are born with it. So the transition is not going to be that difficult. But the real challenge is how to get these current operations, which are on a manual platform, gradually fade away and entirely take to be on an online kind of a situation. But here it's a chicken and egg situation, because we provide the platform, but nudging the customer towards this has been the challenge. Because getting the staff ready also we can do, but the market situation, what the competitors are doing, what the customer expectation is, what the regulator is going to say. All these things matters, because in this particular scenario, banks are caught in a very difficult situation, because one side you have the regulator, one side you have the customer expectation, on the other side you have the shareholders expectation, and you have the staff on the other side. So if you are in the middle as a CEO or part of corporate management or board of directors or whatever, it's an unenviable situation to balance these four competing interests at this moment particularly.
As well.
Yeah. So actually, Aruna, digital is our savior, because if you go that direction, we can save a lot of operational costs. In that sense. So I think the banks, the entire sector would invest more and more in that area, because definitely in the future we cannot sustain these current cost structures.
Absolutely. I have a little bit of a more challenging question to you that came to my mind while you're talking, and a recommendation or a request as well. Question is, S.E.C.U.R.E, I know when you look at the banking, like you said, it's some I would use this word traditionally, people are traditionally working. Would the people accept a digitally ready application without a formal, signature, like a physical signature? How would you change the mind of people? Is it easy? Because even some managers are not ready to accept that.
Yeah, it's partly to do with the legal situation also. Because at the end of the day, the financial transactions, so everyone is so worried about if the matter end up in a court of law, what would be the situation?
Right.
So if those fears are addressed, I think there won't be a problem. But I don't think that this particular area is really tested enough for us to feel comfortable how the legal situation would look at this.
Right.
Because end of the day, you can end up in courts, and then that's why the managers are sometimes still sticking to the old situation, old practices.
Yeah. So there is some question coming related to that. I'll take it up later. But there's a very interesting question coming. Thanks, S.E.C.U.R.E, for your response. Great. Thank you so much for giving clarity.
Anura, just on that, just very quickly on that, the digital platforms that have been there from, I think, Commercial Bank, I don't know the platform, but Sampath Vishwa to Deutsche Bank had DB Direct and all of that. You have the ability still to do like a bulk approval or even individual approvals. The check printing happens with a scan signature going on it.
Yeah.
So we can really adopt those. Somebody is still looking at it and approving it, but do we need to physically, sign or something? Not really. Because if our systems are good enough, then we know who the approving authority is.
Right.
Yeah.
That's true. I was actually trying to insist that if you look at some of the other countries moved very fast on this, and we realize it now. So I think we need to move. I think COVID is a great opportunity for us to further realize and push it hard.
One of the key challenges.
The issue here is sometimes the straightforward bank transactions, checks, we can sort out. But there are situations involving securities.
Right.
Mostly it's mortgages and property connected securities. Situation is pretty complicated there.
Right, understood. Aroshi, thanks S.E.C.U.R.E again. Aroshi, there's an interesting question coming on the thread. I give this to you. So the question is basically, given the current situation, do we have to consider, is it important for banks to consider sometimes mergers now? Because the current situation is, so I'm not going to answer this question, I'm asking Aroshi. When the pandemic, most companies, I'm sorry, I just missed that question. Yeah, do you have to merge some of the banks or banking industry? Do we need to consider mergers to face this situation is the question. Sorry.
Right. I'm not actually going to pick just on banks. I'm going to take the entire, corporate world. Yes, there will be certain mergers, right? Now, in terms of banks, we have our capital adequacy ratios and all to be met, which the government has reduced because of the moratoriums and the requirement for us to fund certain things. the strong banks will still remain strong and will weather this storm kind of thing. But there will be certain other industry players, whether it's the financial services industry or construction or tourism, right? There will be those who will either need to get merged with a stronger entity, or will need to have investors coming in, right? There's no other way. I was listening to a New York University professor who was talking of the elite universities in the US. They will survive because they are very strong. They're charging $350,000 or something for the education. They will survive. The lower ones, the community colleges, will survive. The middle will get wiped out to a certain extent. So this is going to happen, right? And I think even pre-COVID, we saw certain things taking place, especially the construction industry, which was in trouble or has been in trouble. So there is no option, either mergers, I wouldn't just say mergers, or investment, foreign direct investment, or local investment coming in to support those.
Right. That's thank you so much for that answer. I think there's a question coming in terms of online learning. Let me take that. Particularly how this is applied to banking industry and how do we leverage skilling our people is a question on online learning. I take that question for two reasons. One is from digital perspective. The second one is I was heading the innovation of online learning Pearson earlier, Pearson development. So just to let you know, again, whether it's K-12, which is kindergarten to year 12, it's a global standard of K-12 stands for kindergarten to year 12. Then it's called H-head, which is higher education. Then we come to professional learning, which is banking, engineering, all those professional learning. Now, either of these three is very critical, the e-learning or distant learning platforms. You have a number of things. Now, how that can be used in banks and enterprises, again, not just the banks, but any enterprise. Understanding the current situation to train people, I think is very critical. The reason is because you may not be able to have 100 people in a training room. You may not be able to even have 25 people in a small training room. Sometimes you may not be able to have the social distance and conducting a dozen of people in a room. So critical thing is that you should be able to run your learning programs using these learning platforms, e-learning platforms. By doing this, I'm quite sure that if you take even your, in your intake of the banks, I'm quite sure that can be applied if you need to train on different aspects of banking or HR aspects, everything you could build your programs and do e-learning so that people can use and people can assess. And these are being used in multiple enterprises, including banks globally. So I don't see any industry why we can't use e-learning platforms. Number one. Number two, the request I had earlier looking at this question was, is there a way, probably that is something S.E.C.U.R.E and Aroshi, you can also compliment on that. Simple answer to e-learning is definitely yes. This kind of situation, it will definitely help. And in the IT or digital industry, we definitely do lateral learning even today, distant on e-learning platforms. So there's absolutely no reason why we can't train still people fast. The question is AP, Professional Bankers Association, should we take an initiative to look at these skills that are today's digital learning required or digital platforms required, because we are moving very fast on that? Should we consider engaging with these companies who do co-banking and different other platforms to upskill these people quickly, fast enough, so that you can get this while you're working from home, or if this kind of thing happen again, second wave come or whatever, you can consider this an opportunity for us to quickly train. And it should be the Professional Bankers Association that should take the lead. I don't know. I'm just asking from Jeremy, including you, something to consider. And then there are enough companies we can bring to help you, including Pearson, for the e-learning and learning through these platforms.
Aruna, if I am to respond to it.
Yes. Yeah, just I was asking your opinion as
well. I feel that that's a essential thing that we have to embrace e-learning.
Yeah.
But in developing content, I think if organization like APB can actually develop content, then it can be shared by all the other member organizations. That will save a lot of costs. I mean, there may be organizational wide certain peculiarities, but if you really look at certain basic principles and basic areas are very much the same. So rather than we developing so many different things on our own and incurring cost 10 times or 12 times, if a common platform can be developed, common content can be developed, I think that the cost can be shared, and that will be a fantastic thing.
I think Isuru, to respond to that, you don't have to purchase any. There are open platforms that you can freely use, and then only the content is required. So I think it's a great. That's the reason I proposed. We can take it, outside, offline, but that's something we can work together and help.
If I may comment,
yes,
I think platform is no longer the issue. Platforms, there are many platforms available. It's the content that's what takes time. I'm a trainer as well, and I know to do a 1-day training, 8-hour training, it'll take me 100 hours to prepare. So content is really the issue. And I just wanted to say, if you take a lot of the learning today is happening online because we didn't have a choice. But I think we really hit it on the head kind of thing in terms of the young generation and how they connect. For the first time, I think we figured out how to connect with them, because they are with their headphones on the presentation is on the phone, and they completely get it. Right? You send them to a classroom with a teacher in front, they are just asleep practically. Nothing goes into their heads. So we are really, if you're looking at the new generation of workers coming in, I think, I'm not saying e-learning is, you can use it 100%. 80% of the time if you do e-learning, but pull them into the classrooms for the other, practical elements to all of that. I think that's the sort of mix we should be looking at. And from the professional banker side, you should really be looking at talking to commercial bank, Sampath, HNB, getting the agreement that you will do whatever the certificate courses or whatever. Get the agreement so that you're starting off straight away with that commitment from your consumer.
Yeah. Commitment and content, two things that you want. Isuru, a question to you. Now with the situation we are right now in, maybe that we will experience this couple of more weeks or months, predicted to be in some industries end of the year, people will have to, work from home and remotely working, whether we like it or not. Now, how do you take from HR point of view, if they are in and out, absenteeism, leave management, particularly in the banking sector also? How do you take care of all of that? What is your again advice and your opinion on it?
What I feel is that we have to give the discussion to the unit head. Actually, if you try to control the situation centrally, it's not going to work, because each manager, each department head or a unit head should be given the authority to decide how he is going to get his team to operate, whether as split teams or off-site, and then how they are, whether he are going to get everyone to come to office, or how we are going to handle the leave requirements also. If you give the discussion to the ground level, I think they will develop their own mechanisms of handling it. We have already done it to a great degree, because I don't believe in centrally controlling this other than keeping track of the total number that came, that we do. But I think delegating that power to the unit manager is the best thing we can do, as long as the job.
Right. I think, again, like Aroshi said earlier, there are enough tools and techniques you can find that can manage. But I think what you're saying is, the manager should be empowered and delegated that authority so that they can manage, rather than trying to be policing around people.
Yeah.
Anura, also this whole concept of coming to work at 8 o'clock and going at 5 o'clock, I mean, it's from the industrial era, right? Our labor laws are written in the 1950s. What relevance does it have to 2020?
Okay.
You know, really. So here, S.E.C.U.R.E is grinning away, right? We really need to be, I was actually proposing to some UN members of the government that this is the ideal time to really relook at our labor laws, because everybody understands that the world has changed. You don't need to go out there and tell the labor unions, you know, the world has changed, everybody knows it. So we really need to take that opportunity and revamp, because it should not be about, you know, how many hours you're spending in a place. It's about contribution, it's about output, right? And whether you're doing it from the top of a tree or, you know, wherever, who cares really, right? Frontline officers, different issue, because you are customer facing, right? And now frontline might not be at your teller machine or your branch, you know, your branch, you know, cash teller or somebody, but it might be online in terms of this kind of platform.
Right.
We might need the face digitally available, right? So that's the thing.
Agree, Arushi. Actually, S.E.C.U.R.E and Arushi for that one. I know some industries, without mentioning, they've already put forward a proposal to the Labour Department, already to the Minister, just to consider a few changes on the law. I think you're spot on, both of you. I think it's recognition of the delegation plus the labour law changes. Talking about labour law, I have a question to you, Arushi. Now, I know this is a sensitive, but I'm asking anyway. In terms of labor laws and the diversity, all of them, people were talking in the rest of the world, more prominence to women workforce, because they were different labor laws earlier on tried to push it, but then it has happened. So now there's a move on it globally. Now, I feel there's a golden opportunity, two aspects. One is that when you want part-time workers, because if your budgetary restrictions there, you can't in this kind of situation manage, there's an opportunity you can use even part-time labor force, and particularly that can come from housewives, right, in certain situations. And a lot of countries use these working from home opportunities. Now, the second part of that is that I know for a fact that in some areas that when you're marrying quickly or if you're pregnant, that the women workforce is rejected. But this is another golden opportunity to consider that, have that inclusion now, because for me, working from home is a golden opportunity to change all of these laws and thinking and you know, what is the thinking around this in a boardroom? What do you think?
Yes, Anura, I'm the chair of the Women Directors Forum of the Sri Lanka Institute of Directors, right? And we are looking at how... Sorry?
I should be careful asking that question.
No, so this is exactly what we are looking at, right? And currently in the financial services industry, we have the best ratio, right, of women on boards, which is 12.3%. The country as an average is only 8.3%. And I was actually instrumental in bringing the quotas that the previous government gazetted or budgeted. It will go into gazette yet. Quota, not because that's the way we should go, but quota, if you take all of the Scandinavian countries, they have a quota, because that's the fastest. India has a quota. That's the fastest way to get the message and the thinking changed. Once you have that, you know, inclusion coming in, then it's no longer a, you know, big drama kind of thing. So only for that reason. So the issue is not really part-time work, I would think, where you have some job to do, you know, you get a housewife to come in once in 6 months or whatever and help you out with that. No, that's not really the issue. If you take, S.E.C.U.R.E will, you know, bear the truth of this. If you take the majority of the middle tier of a bank, it's female, right? You have a huge band there, which is female. The issue is how many of them are really progressing to the next level, progressing to the board level. They don't, right? Because they fall through the cracks, and we call it the funneling effect. You have a huge number at the bottom layer, but it doesn't quite pan through. And there are a lot of things. It's a way to complex thing to answer now, but one of the key things that we have to really look at is society, and is our society supporting and making that change possible for women, right? So if you take paternity leave, if you take husbands who are going to help with the morning cooking, right? If you take that share of the burden that you see in the West coming in, and also safe travel, creches where your kids, the daycare kind of thing, that your kids can be looked after because some people don't have their parents around. So it's a whole gamut of things that we really need to. So COVID will bring to light that certain things are possible, but it requires a whole societal change to really make it happen, and for us to be increasing our numbers. 53% female population, majority bottom layer you would have, and they are highly qualified people, women, right? But they don't make it because the moment they have children or something, they think that's where they should be, at home.
Absolutely. I think you brought two very valid points. I'm going to get S.E.C.U.R.E's opinion on it, but two very great points. Actually, I was not trying to say we should only have part-time. What I'm saying is that this is a great opportunity that boardroom level we have to push people to understand this, right?
Absolutely.
And you got a great point where most of the women leaders, I'm sorry to say this, who's speaking about this topic is talking about a percentage. Even the parliament had that kind of conversation which make us all laugh at one point. But you said it's not making numbers, but being conscious. I think that is what is really important in DNI, being conscious.
And the whole flexibility side of it, it just should not apply only to the women. It needs to apply to the men as well. Because, say there's a, whatever sports meet or something, and you, the woman, you have a very important meeting to attend, your husband needs to have that flexibility from work to be able to attend. So it's that whole, scenario around childcare that we need to be looking at.
Right. S.E.C.U.R.E, thank you so much, Aroshi, for enlightening us on that. S.E.C.U.R.E, I think connecting to Aroshi's statements, if you look at, even I analyzed at one stage, Aroshi and S.E.C.U.R.E, that the number of people go through O-level, A-level, university degrees, and even this week for another webinar we have on Friday, and I was analyzing. If you really look at, you don't believe that most of the women population get lost at exactly the point, the middle management. That's a time. So it's just that something dynamically happening. S.E.C.U.R.E, what's your response? How do you make
that is where the marriage and children come in, actually. That's the time that when they get to that, getting close to that level, only these other things also start happening in life. So they traditionally, you have a Sri Lankan culture and that situation also. So the family takes priority over the career. So at that point, the male colleagues overtake them. Sometimes it is difficult to catch up later on. But some ladies, I have great admiration for some of them, had done balance both. And they have done well in our bank also. They're at senior level. There are a number of ladies who have done that. I think the situation is changing. And the family is also now understanding it better. And I'm sure in the younger generation, this situation is even better because the older generation had some stereotype impression about who should do what. But I'm sure the current 20-year-olds, late 20s people are quite different. So they will, I think, share the burden of the family. And I'm sure in time to come, this situation will improve and we will see a lot of ladies on the top positions in banks.
Right.
I think one of the key things, S.E.C.U.R.E, also is that you have a support system. And we are lucky that way because our parents think that, they want to take care of the grandchildren. So we are lucky actually. But into the future, we probably as organizations need to have a better support system also coming in. So if you take the apparel industry, a lot of the companies have creches or daycare centers where the kids are brought in and, you know, they are looked after, and you are in your offices or your factory or, you know.
Yeah. Right. I think we got about 5 to 10 minutes left before we wind up. So before I go to the final kind of summary and asking your takeaways, or for the takeaways for the people, there's a question that I'd like to take here that is basically relevant to being more digital, and also again bringing this question to Aroshi and S.E.C.U.R.E also to clarity. The question is, now when we become more and more digital savvy and digitally working on the platforms, and also combining with working from home situation, there's a lot of data you carry in your laptops and a lot of data you take into your mobiles and things like that. I'm trying to take it two aspects because we are in this situation already. So how do you safeguard the privacy and confidentiality? So I know for a fact now, one of the customers I'm personally dealing with is one of the banks in Scotland. And we have taken, well before we dealt with the customer, for some luck, we went through the GDPR compliance process. Or you can go ISO 27000 or whatever, but we went to the GDPR, we can have HIPAA compliance, different data compliances for privacy and confidentiality. So that's, I think, taking into consideration current situation, the question is, how do we make sure this confidentiality is maintained? I think right now, there are some laws that are being discussed in Sri Lanka, not because of COVID, but because of the need in the hour. So we need to get those laws right to protect people's privacy. But definitely it's a need for us to have this GDPR type of a law here that enforce organization enterprises to have certain practices. How do you share information? What information that you can share, not share? What kind of times you need to use private tunnels or the information tunnels to get into the systems, kind of thing. This is very, very much essential time. And these laws, I hopefully will be pushed fast, and ICTA also working on few things I know of. But that is my response to that question. Yes, it is recognized. Yes, it's understood. There are bodies working on it, lawyers. I can name even few female lawyers who are working on it. And they're trying to push it very fast. And COVID will really, really bring that urgency right now. Definitely we need a GDPR kind of a law and organizations to stick and practice. But now I'm asking Aroshi, you, and first from the S.E.C.U.R.E, what is your response to that? Does the banks have those kind of policies and practices to prevent exposure of the client information and making sure those confidential data are protected? Then to Aroshi.
Yes, they are very much there. Actually, banks are sometimes paranoid about this because we have, over the years, we have built that culture of protecting customer data. So we will, we are continuing to go down that road and keep on improving the standards. And in the digital era, yes, there are certain vulnerabilities because you can be hacked into, or there are all kind of possibilities. So banks are investing quite a lot in terms of protecting data and protecting systems. And that's why sometimes, as you know, banks are not willing to go to cloud also because of this same reason. I mean, we want our hardware on premise because we want to be sure that we are in total control of our customer data. So even currently, the biggest investment is in IT security area. In the time to come also, I think it will grow because the threat is always around.
So the question to Aroshi, thanks S.E.C.U.R.E, piggybacking what S.E.C.U.R.E said, is there a particular compliance that right now banks are talking about within Sri Lanka for protection of data?
Compliance and the regulatory requirements have been there right along, Anurag, right? I think one of the key things that we need to look at now is because everybody is in their own homes, you have no option but to give them access to their private laptops or whatever it is, right? Is the education part of it, right? The law is one thing, but the law is of no use if our people don't understand what it's about. So I think the key thing is to make people aware that there are certain requirements because you're working from home, working on your own device and all of that. And if you take cybersecurity, it's a huge problem. If you take the apparel companies, they've been already hit, and it is not just a virus coming in, it's called ransomware, where you have to pay a ransom to get your data back, right? And it's in the papers, everybody knows who the companies are.
Yeah. Last
right?
weekend.
Before that, but so it's really, you're protecting at different angles. If it's our people, our employees, we can really share with them and say, look, these are the requirements, please adhere. And if they are made aware, communicated regularly so that it's at the top of their minds, they will adhere. But on the other side, if you take the banks, there are so many hits on a daily basis where hackers are trying to get in, daily basis. So how do you really, protect yourself from that?
Right. I think, no, I was actually checking my notes again. Aroshi has, even last weekend, I won't mention the company, is one of the largest enterprises which are in the front line, had a larger ransomware attack. Because everyone knows you're at home, your people are not at work, and they are trying to make use of the opportunity.
Correct. And it's how well your firewalls are set up, and whether they can be breached. Until now, we didn't really need to worry about it, but now it has suddenly come up.
Final question to all three of us coming. Basically, the question is that, is it realizing current situation and realizing how we progress as an organization to face future, to build more resilient? Do we need cross-functional teams to be formed, like SWOT teams type of situation where you have risk, you have assessment, you have IT members, you have different departments of the organization, maybe 10-member kind of cross-functional team that may take care of that can be even go into the branch levels. So particularly to the banks, this question coming, is it the time to recognize cross-functional team to be formed within the bank so that you can be more resilient and respond fast?
I'll take that first. Yeah. I think cross-functional teams critical. One of the key things that you have to make sure is operating is your business continuity plan. We have our BCPs in terms of the IT systems, but really not in terms of business. How does business continue? Not just the IT systems, right? So business continuity plan, I think, is one of those. This is what we call a black swan event, Anura, right? It's nowhere in our risk matrices or anything. It just comes and hits us from wherever, and you can't really prepare for it. The only thing you can do is to make sure your people are ready. And one of the key things in doing that is to make sure you're doing those scenario plannings. We do fire drills in companies. Why? Evacuating within 3 minutes or whatever. For what? Just preparing them. Correct. In some eventuality, they can get out. So that is what we really need to be doing. So should it be limited to a cross-functional team of, say, 10 members? I would think not. I would think your entire organization needs to be very, very geared up to handle something like this, because they're saying this is the first of the pandemics to come. There are going to be many more that are going to come our way, right? So we really have no option but to prepare.
Well done. It's a great answer. S.E.C.U.R.E, this is the last question I'm taking. You want to respond to that?
Yeah, I think a lot of organizations are talking about agile and cross-functional aspect, getting into it very much. But I think more than that, the leadership matters. It is not about leadership at the top, but even at ground level. Every unit, the leader matters, because I think that's the thing that needed in this hour. The leaders who display courage, leaders who can establish clarity, leaders who can improve the connectedness and togetherness, the leaders who can drive change in the organization culture. That is what matters. Every branch, every department, every unit, we need those leaders, because very little can be done at the top unless we have those ground level leaders coming up and taking up that role of establishing clarity, communicating and telling everyone how we should face this situation, change the organization culture to handle this new situation. Because we have taken a lot of things for granted.
Yeah.
And particularly in the banking industry, things have been settled for a long, long time. But it's going to dramatically change. And therefore, the culture has to change. The attitudes has to change. And it is the leaders at the ground level, unit level, who can actually make this happen. So we need to really invest time and effort on developing them and giving them authority and giving them courage to face the situation.
Right. Excellent, S.E.C.U.R.E. Thank you so much. I bring a very simple example. I don't know how this is practical to bankers, knowing that your type of transactions and how you deal in the day-to-day. But a company that I work for, responding to that question, my answer is the company that I work for that has nearly about 30 to 40,000 employees globally. I only get a call once in a while, which I don't know which day of the year that gets. And the resilient lead, the BCP lead, which I'm getting a confidential call saying that will be activated in the next 2 hours. That's all I get, and I had to keep my mouth shut. The entire operation is shut down from fiber optics, everything shut down in a while. And I had seriously faced in this organization, and I couldn't say anything to anyone. And the only message getting is that saying, imagine that you had a bomb. Respond now, next 2 hours or 3 hours. And then it takes very harsh, very strict actions to the leadership if it is not ready, which means I had to make sure my team is practicing every 6 months a scenario, because we don't know which day of the year we get the call and what will happen to us. And we have to shift entire operation to sometimes to Boston, sometimes to San Francisco, to make sure that we shifted entire operation to run it that way. So organization does it, because it's a 24/7 organization. So I think I'm saying that I don't know how much we can do that, but I think that's my response to that. We had to get to that level if you seriously do business in the coming future. With that, I would start with Aroshi. If you want to summarize and give a 1 or 2 minutes takeaway to the audience.
Okay, so as I started off by saying, I'm very optimistic, right? If you take the Chinese economy, it is rebounding at a rate that is not expected, right? So we will also come back pretty well and pretty strong. However, I think it's important that we remember the lessons that we've learned without forgetting the 1918 Spanish flu pandemic is called the forgotten pandemic. So we shouldn't really allow this COVID-19 also to be a forgotten pandemic. We need to understand and try to keep in our conscience while we go through the rest of, our days or whatever, that we need to work and live in harmony with the environment. That is one key thing. And that we must live well for ourselves in terms of how do we manage stress, how do we work, what are the patterns, right? As well as with each other. So I think it's that whole humanity part of it that I would like to bring through. If you have those basic ingredients in your repertoire, I think everything else will fall into place.
Thank you so much, Aroshi. Over to you, S.E.C.U.R.E. What's your advice and a takeaway to the audience?
I think I'm talking about particularly in the banking industry. I think we have to radically change the way we are doing things because margins are going to shrink and operational costs will be prohibitive. So we need to really find new ways of doing things, change our procedures, improve our productivity so that we can compete in this environment, because in the months to come, we have to take a lot of hits. And to sustain the current compensation and reward structures, it will be a Herculean task. So wherever we can cut costs, wherever we can achieve efficiencies, we should achieve and restructure our organization as much as possible and face this new situation, because this will be the future anyway. And in this new situation, I think our digital skills as well as our selling skills, the ability to sell, because banks generally don't do it very well. banks wait the customer to turn up to your doorstep. That's I think has to change. The banks will have to offer services, go to customers, interact with them more, and so that for that some actual personality changes and some attitudinal changes also has to come. So if we don't do these things, it will be very difficult for us to continue as the way things are. So to at least to protect the status quo, we have to change, and the change is inevitable.
So I think, Aroshi, if I summarize your whole thing, the takeaway, I think I summarize with this word: deal with the nature, live to deal with the nature better. I think your one, if I summarize, S.E.C.U.R.E, I call it change is inevitable, and make sure that you understand that, right? And here is my takeaway, or my takeaway to the audience from me. I think I'm also very optimistic and opportunistic. The reason I'm saying is that there are industries that are suffering, real estate globally, travel and aviation, if you look at, and oil industries, etc. But if you really look at the positive side, the opportunities, that huge opportunities coming in education, particularly edutech, if you want to say, like fintech, edutech. Of course, fintech, digital currencies and digital way of doing business. And one of the industries globally right now going very high, two industries, which is telecom. I'm telling you with the statistics, not assumptions, with looking at Deloitte and World Bank, all of that, IMF, economic forums. So the two industries that are really booming today is retail and telecom, because there's a need. And the others are edutech and particularly fintech areas, and also there's other logistics. So there's a huge opportunity, like both deal with the nature, understand, do it better. Change is required. We need to understand and bring the productivity that is all existing. But at the same time, there's a huge opportunity that's created for everyone, not just the bankers out there, to start investing and thinking of. So it's not all bad right now. I mean, come on, let's think that this is creating positivity. This is giving us more energy. This is giving us to think more pragmatically moving forward. So I think it's a big lesson we learned. Let's focus ourselves to get ourselves recovered. Three things. Deloitte ranked global right now, saying that 3 stages countries are in, which is response stage, recovery stage, and thrive. I'm feeling if we work together this way, we go to thrive stage very fast. Thank you so much, Aroshi, for your very valuable input and sharing all the thoughts and being open and bringing some names also. And same way, S.E.C.U.R.E, like I said, you dealing with one of the Sri Lanka's 2 largest unions, trade unions, and you're very open about your thoughts. Thank you so much for bringing that liveliness to this conversation. And Professional Bankers Association, thank you so much for organizing this first session. Congratulations.
Thank you for inviting us.
Thanks, Anura and APB.
Thank you, APB.
Right. So listening to the most valuable comments on the speakers, I wondering whether COVID is here to stay or whether it is only temporarily. But what we see is the change, of course, will be permanent in us, which we have to adopt the new lifestyles, whether we like it or not. So with that, wrapping up, we thank you all speakers, Aroshi, S.E.C.U.R.E, and Aruna for having a wonderful discussion, sharing your thoughts. And I think it was enlightening a lot to see new thoughts of how people could face the new challenges and adapt in this environment. So it's all about changing the mindset to adapt to this culture. So thank you very much on behalf of APB for joining us for this session. And of course, to your participants, I think it's a wonderful day. We had more than over 100 participants joining us and staying on with us. Thank you very much. And of course, for those who could not join us, we will try next time, because APB is going to continue to have such programs within the next couple of months. So that will keep you all aware of the programs and post them. Thank you very much. Good night. Stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. See you.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.